In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, August 23rd. For the first time in 8 months, inflation prospects among consumers here fell to 4.3% in August, down from a record high of 4.7% back in July. President Yoon has pledged to revamp the country's welfare system to better protect the vulnerable, especially those in debt owing to high medical expenses. And as South Korea and China look to mark 30 years of ties this week, we revisit the rift over the deployment of an anti-ballistic missile defense system here in the country. Inflation prospects among consumers here retreated to 4.3% in August from 4.7% back in July. That was the highest since the start of the monthly survey 2 decades ago. Our Finance Ministry correspondent Jeong starts us off.
South Korea could soon be over the worst of the high inflation. Consumers in the country are still anticipating high inflation in the coming months, but those expectations are lower than last month, with the expected inflation figure dropping for the first time in 8 months. According to the Bank of Korea's survey of roughly 2,500 households in August, which was released on Tuesday, expected inflation for the next 12 months stood at 4.3%. That's down 0.4 percentage points from the all-time high figure recorded in July. The Bank of Korea attributed the fall to expectations that global consumer prices will peak in the second half of this year and oil prices will fall. The think tank Korea Economic Research Institute says in order to curb consumer prices, it is important to stabilize the expected inflation rate. According to its analysis, when the expected inflation rises by 1 percentage point, it leads to a 0.67 percentage point rise in the actual consumer price index. The think tank said if the expected inflation settles down, the inflation is likely to peak in September at 7%, then start to fall. South Korea's inflation hit a new record in July as prices rose at the fastest pace in nearly 24 years. It was the second month in a row that consumer prices have risen on year by more than 6%, which is far higher than the government's target of 2%. Meanwhile, consumer sentiment improved a touch. The composite consumer sentiment index for August came to around 88.8, up 2.8 points. But the figure is still well below 100, meaning the public is more pessimistic than optimistic about the economy. Jeong, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, the euro has lost ground against the US dollar, surrendering as much as 1.1% on Monday to just around 99 cents. The fall in value of the euro comes amid soaring inflation in the region, as well as prospects of an energy crisis this winter, given the fallout of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, Monday's decline marks the second time the euro slid below parity against the US dollar this year, after a brief drop back in July. The dire consequences of the global drought are beginning to show, with power shortages in the US, shipping disruptions in Europe and factory closures in China. Our Arirang has more on the economic repercussions of the extreme weather.
Many U.S. cities rely heavily on major rivers, which supply them not just with water, but also electricity. With record drought reported in western regions of the U.S., the Colorado River, which supplies many western states with water and electricity, is running dry. The river, which flows from the Rocky Mountains to the desert plains of America's Southwest, provides water to 40 million people in the country, as well as Mexico. It also supports a $15 billion a year agriculture industry. However, with states unable to agree on a plan to ration water drawn from the parched Colorado River, hydroelectric turbines may stop turning, major cities may be forced to restrict water usage, and farmers may have to leave their land to turn to dust. A drought in Europe is also affecting the economy there, as ships are having difficulty moving through major waterways due to low water levels. Such is the case over in Germany on River Rhine, which is a major shipping artery in the region. Falling water levels means less freight can be transported, leading to delays and higher costs. The river runs through Germany's industrial heartland from the Swiss Alps to the North Sea, carrying everything from grain to chemicals and coal. But the low water volume means ships can only load 30 to 40% capacity to avoid running aground. Economists say the disruption could impact the country's economic growth by as much as half a percentage point. Record high temperatures and record low rainfall in west central China have crippled hydropower generation and prompted the shutdown of many factories there, a blow to a Chinese economy that is already seeing stagnant consumer spending and a deeply troubled real estate market due to the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic. The Sichuan Province, one of China's most populous and fast-growing industrial bases in recent years, typically generates more than 3/4 of its electricity from its huge dams. However, with low water levels, the dams cannot generate enough electricity even for Sichuan's own needs, forcing factories there to close up for up to a week at a time. With little rainfall during fall and winter, many of the major economies hit by the summer drought fear the worst is yet to come. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, President Yoon Suk-yeol has pledged to revamp the country's welfare system to keep people from resorting to tragic ends, making sad note of a family in Suwon, including a mother and her 2 daughters, who are believed to have committed suicide to escape death and disease. To take a listen to his remarks earlier on this Tuesday morning on his way to work.
어떤 특단의 조치가 필요할 것입니다. 그래서 중앙정부에서는 이분들을 잘 찾아서 챙길 수 있는 시스템을 만들고 자치단체와 협력해서 이런 일들이 또다시 발생하지 않도록 대통령으로서 어려운 국민들을 좀 각별히 살피겠습니다.
With regard to questions about the weakening won against the US dollar, the president vowed to monitor the potential ripple effects. On vacancies in his cabinet, the president said he will promptly announce his nominees for health and education ministers. Come Wednesday this week, South Korea and China mark their 30th anniversary of diplomatic ties, and the occasion comes amid differences in stance over the deployment of the US anti-ballistic missile defense system here in the country. Our Min Soo-kyun has the second installment of the 3-part series on bilateral ties by our foreign affairs correspondents.
Back in 2016 July, Seoul and Washington announced plans to deploy the U.S. anti-ballistic missile defense system THAAD in South Korea.
The THAAD system will not be directed toward any third country, but will only be for any North Korean nuclear or missile threats. The deployment of THAAD will strengthen our defense capabilities with the U.S.
The decision drew an angry response from China, suspending group tours to South Korea, boycotting Korean products, and even banning K-pop music and TV dramas. In efforts to mend strained ties, the then South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa explained the government's position regarding the controversial anti-missile system. During a parliamentary audit, Kang said the government was not considering additional deployment of THAAD batteries, was not planning to participate in the US-led missile defense network, and was not going to develop the trilateral security cooperation with the US and Japan into a military alliance. This became known as the 3 No's. China wants the current Yoon Suk-yeol administration to stay committed to this policy over fears that the THAAD system would undermine its security interests. In fact, it's made new claims, saying that South Korea had not only vowed to pursue the 3 No's policy, but also pledged to limit the operation of the THAAD battery that's already in place. South Korea, however, has strongly dismissed those claims, stressing there was no formal agreement or promise made between the 2 countries, even under the previous administration. Professor Kim Ang-kwon from the Korean National Diplomatic Academy pointed out that China appears to be using the 3 No's policy to its advantage.
China feels anxious about the deployment of THAAD. That's why it's trying to resolve the problem by claiming it's a promise or an agreement and not just a plan set by the former government.
He also said it's necessary for South Korea to clarify its position on THAAD and to hold regular talks with China on the issue.
Even if conflicts arise in the short term, discussing THAAD issues with China will be a necessary step in building an equal cooperative relationship in the long run.
While THAAD remains a litmus test for South Korea and China relations, both countries agree that this should no longer become a stumbling block to their bilateral ties. Min Suk-hyun, Arirang News.
And in related news, top diplomats here in Seoul and over in Beijing will commemorate the 30th anniversary of the two countries' diplomatic ties tomorrow, that is Wednesday. Foreign Minister Park Jin and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi will be partaking in related events separately in their respective countries. Pundits say the presence of these officials at the planned ceremonies highlights the importance of bilateral ties amid the current geopolitical uncertainties. Here in the capital city, the gates to Gyeongbokgung Palace will open for night tours at the start of September. The tours will run from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. every night from September 1st to November 6th. Now, tickets will go on sale from Thursday this week and are priced at 3,000 won per person. It's a popular event here in Seoul, with tickets often selling out quickly. So for those of you interested, do seek more information at royalpalace.go.kr. And those are the headlines for the first half of the Daily Report. In the second half, we touch upon mobile connection here in the country. Stay with us.
Says we will share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean new day. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
Protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
We take it high, let it low, on the grind, on the go. 뜻대로 되지 않아도 마음이 계속 가는 대로 어디까지 갈 수 있을지는 신밖에 몰라. Yeah, 나도 인간이라 의심될 때 있지 아주 가끔. Yeah, 뭐 멘트 다시 잡고 yeah, 허수다인 날 이 세상 가끔에도 나는 뒤 돌아봐. 믿어 끝나기 전에 계속 도전해. Yeah, we on fire. 아직도 넌 눈치만 보고 있어. 아무도 몰라 발 딛기 직전. 왜 아직 기적이라고 믿어. 매 순간이 기회라고 그 네거티비티 당장 뒤집어버려. 연속 번 넘어져도 chill. 난 못 먹어도 하늘 위로 다 믿고 비가 와도 웃을 수 있게. 뒤에서 말이 꺼도 내 두 발로 딱 설 수 있게. 뒤집어 안 될 거란 생각은 뒤로. 언제나 네 자신을 믿어. 끝나기 전에 계속 도전해. Yeah, we on fire. I feel so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good, but right now, maybe this is forever.
Welcome back. Some say Korea is a digital pace setter, as it is perhaps the world's most connected country. Well, the truth is South Korea is indeed quite advanced in terms of mobile connection, which is remarkably fast and reliable with quite a few options available. For more on this reality, I have Andres Sanchez-Brown from EFE Spain. Andres, welcome back.
Always a pleasure to be here.
I also have Alexander Anastasov at Phone Arena live on the line. Alexander, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Right. Andres, in April 2019, South Korea became the first country to adopt 5G nationwide. Now, that being said, let's start off with where South Korea stands in terms of mobile connection with regard to it, as compared to, that is, its global counterparts.
Well, actually, you just pointed it out. Korea was the first country in 2019 to actually have a countrywide operative 5G network. And I think that actually tells you where the network already stands. From the beginning, I believe it was 85 cities from the start, from the when the system started operating. You could use 5G already in 85 cities. You could use it in motorways. You could use it on the KTX. That was 3 years ago. Now, obviously, all new and more advanced equipment has been installed. Networks are stronger. So actually, if you check, let's say, joint studies or surveys, Korea's network, compared to other countries' networks, normally ends up first in most categories. For example, let's say if you compare it to the rest of Asia Pacific countries' networks, when it comes to downloading, uploading content, video streaming, e-gaming, Korea basically ranks first in almost every category. And when it doesn't, for example, some networks that are apparently starting to grow faster are, for example, Malaysia's, but there's a catch there too. Because, for example, the country has just started offering real 5G speed this year, even though the technology was present, the full spectrum wasn't being used. And also their networks, of course, have way less users compared to Korea, where, you know, the number of users is in the millions right now, of course.
Right, and staying with that, Alexander, according to industry findings, there were reportedly over 22 million 5G subscribers here in South Korea as of the end of March this year. What do you believe are the implications of this particular reality?
Well, I think we're still at the point in time where 5G has a sense of novelty to it. But I think much like 4G, with time that will disappear and it will become the standard and people won't even talk about it that much. So let's say the number that you said is approximately half of South Korea's population. And by 2025, that number is supposed to increase to even 60%, somewhere close to 60%. And by that speed, I think Korea will be one of the first countries where it becomes a standard, so much so that maybe phone manufacturers don't need to market 5G on their phone packaging or even their phone name.
Right, and talking about packaging, South Korea, Andres, is now offering an affordable 5G price plan of between 50,000 won to around 60,000 won per month to those who use less data. How does this price plan compare to that in Spain for access, of course, to 5G services?
That's actually a very good question if, you know, we want to gauge what actually the Korean 5G network is about and what it's actually capable of offering you as a user, as a customer. Because actually, for example, in Spain, you have, let's say, 5 or 6 carriers are already offering 5G services. And actually, they're offering unlimited data, unlimited calls, and they're offering this for, let's say, price tags that go around 30 to 32, 33 euros, which is actually 42,000 won. It's actually cheaper. But then again, there's a catch. Once again, Spain's network, even though officially started operating in 2019, let's say a couple of months after Korea's network started, the actual spectrum, the actual speeds that users have been able to enjoy are nothing compared to what you get in Korea. So, for example, you would be paying this lower price tag, but then most of these operators can only guarantee service in 2 or 3 provinces. Because in that respect, I believe it's only 80% of Spanish population that has access to full 5G service. I mean, up until recently, I believe only like 20 big cities in Spain had actual 5G real speed services. So what you're going to get here is you might get a good deal, right, in monetary terms. But then again, when it comes to reliability of the network, I mean, I think in that sense, Korea is unbeatable. You're getting, what you're paying for.
Right, I see. And Alexander, staying with that, what can you tell us about the 5G price plan over in Bulgaria?
Well, actually, the situation is kind of similar to that in Spain. You get 5G no matter the plan that you choose and no matter the carrier. So the plus side to that is that you have 5G even if you have the cheapest, the most affordable plan. But there's two caveats to this. First of all, of course, you need to have a 5G phone. But second of all, our coverage is not that good across the country. You basically have to be in one of the few major cities if you want to catch 5G. And even then, when you have 5G, you don't get the full spectrum, the full speed.
Right, I see. And Andres, before we move beyond 5G, many claim, like I mentioned at the start, that South Korea is the most wired country in the world. What do you suppose has made this particular status possible?
Well, actually, I mean, since, recovering democracy, Korean governments actually have been investing heavily in anything that had to do with telecommunications, right? You might remember back in the 80s, systems like government services were computerized pretty fast. Then there was the push for installing fiber, for example, which was done earlier than other countries in comparison. There were bills passed, for example, in the late 90s in order to avoid monopolies when it came to facilitating internet service. So of course that guaranteed, healthy competition among 2, 3, 4 major carriers and this we're talking about, LAN connections back in the day. This guaranteed, fair price tags when you wanted to get connected to the internet. And I remember by the mid-thousands, I was living still in Spain, and I remember doing a story about e-gaming in Korea because e-gaming was just very nascent back in the day in Spain. But here in Korea, I remember talking to an esports athlete, a Spanish one that had attended an event in Korea, and he was telling me all about this completely different world where everybody was playing at 24/7. Competitions were huge. Players were already famous. And so basically when 3G technology starts becoming available, of course, and then smartphones, Korea is an early user of both technologies. People just, want to keep connected wirelessly. So in the end, you have generations of Koreans that have grown accustomed to being connected wherever and whenever they are, right?
Right, we are very used to that, of course. Now, Alexander, while 5G has yet to take root in many parts of the world, the term 6G is making quite a bit of local headlines here. What can you tell us about 6G? I mean, how does it compare to 5G, and how soon can we expect 6G in the market?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to point out that 6G is still a concept. It's not, in fact, reality yet. But that being said, most researchers agree that maybe we should see 6G by 2030. And the way it would be differentiated from 5G, of course, would be, first of all, speed, which should be much, much higher than even that of 5G. And keep in mind that we still haven't completely utilized 5G and what it can achieve. But apart from speed, it could also boost innovations like edge computing, for example, or stuff like virtual reality, augmented reality.
Right. Andres, South Korea, for its part, has said that a pilot 6G will be available in the year 2026 and be commercialized between 2028 and 2030, as Alexander has mentioned. What more can you tell us about South Korea's advances in the field of 6G?
Well, actually, this plan was actually announced in my country during the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. The Ministry of Science made a big announcement and, announcing that Korea once again wanted to be the first country in the world to implement it on a national level. As Alexander pointed out, the plan is, this is still a concept, but the idea behind this is that 6G would be I think the ministry was talking about 50 times faster than 5G's potential. So basically, we're talking almost about zero latency, what is called, which is the time that a data package or data bundle takes from one point to another. They're talking about making the network available when you're like 10 kilometers above the ground, which basically means that you could use this in a commercial airplane. There's been a lot of talk, but what is Korea doing? Well, for example, there's been a bunch of MOUs, for example, signed with countries like the US or Finland or the UK. There's a lot of joint research, but most importantly, the government is actually willing to invest in these key technologies that would make you be able to set the standards, to get the patents. And of course, the government wants to invest in this case because, companies find it's actually a very risky investment at this point. So for example, there's a 10 billion won program where there's this public-private joint research programs, for example, with KAIST and LG. There's another one where Samsung Electronics partnered with Koreode. There's 6 focus areas already been established when it comes to R&D, and then one area where we've actually seen a lot of investment already, and that is becoming a reality, is satellites. As you might remember, we saw the Nuri rocket deploying its first satellite in June. The plan is that future Nuri rockets will deploy all these satellites that will be, the future network of 6G communications.
Right. Alexander, what is your assessment of Korea's advances, so to speak, and what are some of the country's strengths, perhaps, over its global counterparts?
Oh, first of all, Korea is known to be highly focused on advanced technology in general, but of course, especially mobile networks as well. So I think it's no coincidence that one of the first widely adopted countries, 5G countries, was South Korea, and I think it would be kind of a similar situation with 6G as well. Also, not to mention that many of the parties that are actively researching the 6th generation of mobile network are situated in Korea, like Samsung, for example.
Right, it is. Andres, on a more practical note then, for the sake of our foreign viewers, what can you share with us about choosing a network and a phone plan here in the country?
Well, that's actually a very good question, I think, and foreign viewers are probably going to be very interested. I happen to be an early user of 5G because, of course, also job requirements. I'm not going to say the name of the carrier that I chose. I already had a contract with them. And I actually chose to acquire a new phone. As Alexander pointed out, you do need a 5G phone, a phone that supports 5G to use the network. I can say that the price is very competitive. I'm very happy with my plan. I actually have 2 phone lines. One of them has unlimited 5G data. I have internet and cable TV bundled all together. And I got to say, the price is extremely competitive. It is around, let's say, 100,000, 120,000 won per month. That would be
for both your phones. For
both my phones and my internet and my cable TV. So I'm actually very happy with it, and I'm mostly happy because 5G changed the way I work. For example, with video, especially, I can literally shoot, edit on my phone, and send from anywhere I want, and I can send huge amounts of video in very, very little time. This is actually very impressive compared to what 4G was capable of doing. I can actually do a live TV stand-up right now, basically using only my phone. So in that sense, it's actually very, very incredible.
Right, and which is why you're very happy with it. Alexander, back on the 6G front, some pundits have spoken about a number of challenges to be tackled in the development of 6G network. Do you care to elaborate?
Well, I think 6G carries the same kind of major hurdle as 5G, which is, it has millimeter waves, which are the main reason why it's so fast and it can transfer so much data in such little time. But that also means that it carries the same hurdle that this connection can be easily interrupted. just due to the way it works. And to me, the thing that would differentiate 6G from 5G is if we find a way to overcome this hurdle and make it a more stable connection while also keeping the amazing speeds that it brings.
Right, and staying with that, Andres, what are some areas that can be better addressed by relevant authorities here, perhaps, to ensure a safe and productive mobile experience?
Well, I am no engineer, so of course on the technical side, there's very little that I can share with you. But that said, and as Alexander was pointing out, the potential problems with 6G is basically stability of the network. And the thing here is that if we are actually to use in the future the full potential of 6G, and that is, for example, the real Internet of Things, we will see apparently, all sorts of devices connected between them, but also maybe drones, maybe self-driven cars, maybe even flying taxis. Of course, in this case, I think addressing safety and I mean, the stability of the network is basic there because, security of passengers, for example, people walking in the street, I would say should be the number one priority right now, yes.
Right, of course, I agree right there. Alexander, what is your outlook with regard to the future of the global telecommunications industry?
To me, I think we're at the cusp of making a significant jump in the way we handle telecommunication. So whether that is 6G and everything it might entail, or some other innovation like edge computing, for example, I think right now there's some sense of us reaching a point where something groundbreaking is about to arrive and happen. And maybe that breaking thing can push us into a new age or a new way of living.
Right, I see. And staying with that, Andres, what is your outlook with regard to the future of mobile connection technology here in South Korea? I mean, what more can we do to ensure safety, like you mentioned earlier?
Well, as I said, I'm no engineer, but I can say that I've driven self-driving cars. I've taken part in programs funded by the government
here in South Korea.
In South Korea, with self-driving technology, and I do know that, of course, security is their main priority. Technically, as I say, it's very difficult for me to tell you what they should do, but I do know that they're definitely addressing these issues, and that Korea wants to be there in the forefront. And when it comes to Internet of Things in general, augmented reality, metaverse, etc. I mean, the stakes are clear. I think it doesn't matter who's in power in Korea. I think that idea has been pursued since for the past 3 decades, and the Korean government is, pretty clear on where its bet is, and that it wants to make, future internet networks, future mobile networks safe, faster, and, a reference for the rest of the world.
Right. And staying with the concerns raised by Andres, Alexander, what can you tell us about the safety measures in place in Bulgaria, perhaps to ensure, of course, the safety of people as well as privacy concerns?
I feel like we haven't really reached that point of 5G yet in Bulgaria. Of course, carriers have their standard safety measures, and they make sure to let you know when you're signing a new plan. But the country hasn't taken any major actions towards that as of yet.
Right, so there is room for improvement then?
Definitely.
All right, Alexander, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts at this very early hour in Bulgaria. And Andres here in the studio as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thanks for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Biden administration's latest efforts to rein in inflation have presented a number of unexpected hurdles for South Korea's electric car makers. Our Arirang explains.
The Biden administration has taken what it says is a big step to tame inflation in the U.S.
We're going to cut the deficit point out by another $300 billion with the Inflation Reduction Act over the next decade. We're cutting deficits to fight inflation by having the wealthy and big corporations finally begin to pay part of their fair share.
One of the key provisions of this Inflation Reduction Act aims to make electric vehicles more mainstream. It will allow all buyers, even if they have a high income, to get a $7,500 tax credit for buying an EV. But to qualify, the car has to be assembled in North America. This one requirement alone has already disqualified dozens of EV models, including those from South Korea's biggest car makers, Hyundai and Kia. Adding to this, the act restricts the use of battery components or critical minerals derived from China, which has caused a major controversy.
The problem is that the law was signed after Hyundai Motor pledged to invest over $10 billion and build EV production lines in the state of Georgia just 3 months ago when President Biden visited Korea. This law uses an America First kind of logic.
Hyundai and Kia have no EV production lines in the U.S. Their EVs, the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, are made in Korea. On top of that, for EV battery components, South Korea relies on China to source over 70% of its materials. So how will South Korean EV makers be able to survive in the U.S. market? After the law was passed, South Korea expressed concerns that it could be a violation of the rules of the World Trade Organization and the South Korea-US FTA. On Friday, Seoul's top diplomat Park Jin reportedly asked his U.S. counterpart Antony Blinken for some flexibility in the way the law is implemented. In this case, an expert says, South Korea has two main strategies.
The first would be for the South Korean government to keep urging the U.S. to delay the implementation of the law or to allow tax benefits for Korean EVs while working with American organizations that oppose the law. Also, Korean car makers should get their EV production lines ready as soon as possible, especially Hyundai Motor, which will have its own EV lines in Georgia in 2025.
He added that Hyundai and Kia should consider at least temporarily converting their combustion engine production lines to produce EVs so that they can respond to this crisis without delay. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Plans by Japan to release wastewater from the devastated Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean are fueling renewed interest in efforts to effectively eliminate radioactive elements. Well, researchers here appear to have made remarkable advances to that end. My colleague Yoon has details.
In a few months, we may see coasts like where I am right now contaminated with nuclear waste. That's because Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority has given the green light to release radioactive water from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant starting next spring. Though the Japanese government said it would dilute the water so tritium levels fall below what's considered dangerous, neighboring countries like South Korea and China have expressed concerns. That's why a group of researchers here in the country has decided to take action. They found a way to get rid of harmful radioactive elements like iodine from the sea. And let's go find out how.
The Korea Atomic Energy Research Institute took the initiative in 2019. In just 3 years, they've accomplished what other researchers around the world couldn't. They found a way to selectively remove radioactive iodine from water. What did the trick was coating magnetic iron nanoparticles with platinum. Because platinum sticks well to iodine, it can suck the radioactive particles out. Being able to selectively remove radioactive elements is said to be a game changer.
We've now found a way to easily and efficiently save the Earth. Unlike other absorbents out there, ours can be used up to 100 times. Because we're able to selectively get rid of radioactive iodine, the cleaned up water can still be of use.
The latest development can also be used at hospitals to clean up radioactive waste from anti-cancer drugs. It can also selectively extract natural iodine, which is used to make medicine. The team leader said more developments are on the way.
Right now, we're only able to decontaminate 20 litres of water at once. We hope we can expand the maximum capacity before this development gets commercialized. We're also working on extracting other radioactive elements like cesium.
Once this technology is commercialized, South Korea will be one of the first countries in the world to suck out millions of tons worth of iodine from the sea. 신예은, Arirang News.
And the southern resort island of Jeju is seeking to make the most of its indigenous ingredients to better tap into the food and cosmetics markets. Our Cho Sung-min has more on these efforts.
Meal kits, or easy-to-cook packaged meals, have recently gained popularity in South Korea due to their convenience. As the market has grown so much, there are always new variations hitting supermarket shelves. This includes meal kits with high-end delicacies from Jeju Island, such as octopus, black-pig pork, and shiitake mushrooms. The meal kit companies also provide instructional videos on how to prepare the food, which can be found by scanning a QR code on the packaging with a smartphone. Their efforts to use cleaner ingredients are attracting younger customers wishing to enjoy a healthy meal.
Our products come in various forms like stews, so customers are highly satisfied with our ingredients. We strive to make fresher, cleaner, and healthier meal kits using organic ingredients grown ourselves.
Some fruits and vegetables from the island are regarded as key ingredients in the edible cosmetics that have become popular. While most of the products are made using carrot and tangerine extracts, some of the more premium cosmetics are even made of different types of seaweed and rare plants from Hallasan Mountain, like almond mushrooms and prickly pear cacti.
Carrots from the garden and John Dory fish caught in our waters are all valuable ingredients and high-quality sources that we can use. We have now become a global brand with branches overseas.
On the back of these new products made with local ingredients, businesses from Jeju Island hope to continue to come up with high-quality products that show off what their island has to offer. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
On the medical front, properties within red pepper leaves have offered researchers here with a fresh approach to treating diabetes. Our Yoon explains.
The summer can at times be unbearably hot, but it's also the season when food ingredients are abundant. For many elderly Koreans, vegetables seasoned with red pepper leaves and pickled vegetables bring back nostalgic memories of their mother's cooking. One of the key ingredients, red pepper leaves, is known to help lower blood sugar levels. Now, the Rural Development Administration has developed a new type of pepper designed to produce leaves that are even better at keeping blood sugar levels down. This is the second version of the wongi pepper, which was first cultivated in 2008. The pepper has since been crossbred to triple its blood sugar suppressing effects.
According to our analysis of blood sugar suppressing efficacy, diabetes drugs on the market show around 80% efficacy, and the wongi-2 pepper extract shows 74.8%, which is not much lower than the actual drugs.
The fruits of these wongi peppers don't contain much of the blood sugar suppressing substance and can be eaten like normal peppers.
We can cultivate both fruits and functional leaves, so I feel it could help improve our profits.
Results of the research on wongi-2 pepper leaves and suggestions for how to use the leaves as a food ingredient have recently been published in international academic journals. 이은진, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the US, the White House medical advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci has announced he's leaving his current postings. Known as the face of the US response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Fauci has announced his departure from federal service. The top infectious disease expert said on Monday that he will step down from both his position as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and as the White House chief medical advisor. Dr. Fauci became something of a celebrity during the COVID-19 pandemic, often contradicting statements made by high-level officials and tackling misinformation. The 81-year-old's exit comes after a 5-decade-long career in federal service, which saw him advise 7 U.S. presidents. Fauci said he plans to continue working by using his experience to guide the next generation of scientists and advance public health. Former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has been hit with terrorism charges. The charges were filed on Sunday by local authorities who claim that the former cricket player attempted to threaten Pakistan's police and judiciary bodies. This because of a speech Khan gave at an Islamabad rally on Saturday, where he accused authorities of detaining and torturing his chief of staff. Since news broke of the charges against Khan, protesters have gathered outside his Islamabad home, vowing retaliatory action if he is arrested. Khan has not yet commented but must appear in the country's anti-terrorism court on Thursday. The events follow his ousting as PM in April after he lost a vote of no confidence. The heart of Brazil's first emperor has arrived in Brasilia as part of celebrations to mark 200 years since the South American country's independence. Arriving by plane from Portugal, the preserved heart of Pedro I received a hero's welcome, which included a cannon salute and other military honors. The heart, which arrives after permission was granted by officials in the city of Porto, will be put on display as Brazil gears up to celebrate Independence Day on September 7th, before being returned to Portugal. The monarch declared Brazil an independent nation in 1822 before his death in 1834. He had his heart removed and taken to the city of Porto in accordance with his final wishes. Now, Ukraine is set to kick off a new football season. The first whistle will be blown on Tuesday local time when Shakhtar Donetsk and Metalist 1925 meet on the pitch at Kyiv's Olympic Stadium. That match comes one day before Ukraine's Independence Day. Although all 65,000 seats in the stadium will remain empty due to safety concerns, it's hoped that the resumption of football matches will restore a sense of normalcy to the country amid the ongoing war with Russia. The move has been supported by the Ukrainian army and President Volodymyr Zelensky in a bid to boost morale. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good Tuesday afternoon. According to the lunar calendar, today is the 14th solar term, Chosa, which means it's time to kill the heat. Now that the rain has tapered off, it's quite hot and muggy in the capital, hitting 30 degrees. But it's a sure sign that autumn is right upon us. The high in Seoul is predicted to be lower than the average from tomorrow for the time being. And as the rain expands nationwide, parts of Jeollado and Gyeongbokgung provinces will see more rain with up to 50 millimeters expected, which will continue until tomorrow afternoon. And other regions will have up to 30 millimeters of rain. The rain could be accompanied by stormy conditions, so stay safe if you're out and about. And autumn is around the corner, but still, it's hot and sticky with a heat advisory on Jeju Island. As the rain brings humidity into the air, feels like temperatures are going to be even hotter. And tomorrow we have rain in the forecast on Jeju, and high temperatures will gradually subside, going down below 30 degrees. Now, let's take a look at the worldwide weather conditions.
That brings us to the end of Tuesday's edition of the Daily Report. We return with more coverage tomorrow, that is Wednesday. See you then. Thank you for now.